and welcome to Comically Pedantic, where we take a detailed look at the complicated concepts, characters, and history of comic book culture. I'm your host, Eric L. Jason. Joining me on this episode, as always, is the wonderful Corinne Levy.
Bonjour! I'm French now.
Okay, so before we get too invested in this episode, I need to ask what your bright spot is.
We haven't recorded in so long, and I forgot to ask. Okay. Time has passed since we've last done this. So a lot of things.
We've had a lot of time pass, and a lot of stuff have come up.
Downs, things have come up, things have moved along. What a time to be alive. I got to go to IKEA for the first time with you in Austin. That was great. What else? I'm moving.
I was gonna say
but I'm not gonna tell you where.
You have a new place.
I will be moving.
I'm very upset about it because it's much further away.
I know. We're all sad about it, but it's fun. It's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Our crew will be friends forever, so I'm not worried about it. Plus, we did sign on to a year-long project, essentially. So not that there's a written contract that we have to finish this, but just for the sake of integrity, we have to at least finish this project.
we have a handshake agreement. That's
we do, and that's enough for me.
Yeah,
I don't need to do some weird blood ritual. I'm aware that good handshake, we're doing this. So yeah, those are all the big things. I finished part 2 of Sandman, that big old book.
Oh, we're gonna have to do another episode for that.
I'm so excited, and I just started watching the show. Very behind everybody else, but I have so many thoughts, but I'm not going to share them right now because we have a different thing to talk about. We got to talk about Spider-Man again, because what else do we ever talk about? Nothing. It's just Spider-Man now.
If you were to log into our Instagram for the show, it is everything that is recommended to the show is a Spider-Man related thing.
Yeah.
Because that's most of what we're posting about, talking about, so it's hey.
And then occasionally a Power Rangers thing. But yeah. Otherwise is Spider-Man.
Power Rangers, Sonic the Hedgehog, Spider-Man, but the majority of what we do is Spider-Man related. So I think that it's picking up, and it is listening.
It is. Our little FBI agents are also Spider fans, and that's okay. I think it's just funny that it's we're so committed to doing this, and this is after reading it, I'm oh yeah, this is a fun jaunt, but I still don't think Spider-Man's gonna be my go-to comic pickup.
So I think this is where it gets a little iffy, because for me, Spider-Man was always a huge character. I was obsessed with Spider-Man as a kid, and if you were to ask me to give you what I was super into when it comes to Spider-Man, all of my examples are going to be very old.
Right.
Almost none of the new stuff. I love Ultimate Spider-Man, but at this point it's 20 years old.
Okay.
Then beyond that, the majority of my favorite Spider-Man stuff comes from the 80s or the 60s.
And I think that's okay. I mean, it's all right to just kind of one era of something. I don't think it makes you any more or less of a fan or anything. I really loved the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies. And I think that might be it. I think that's it for my Spider-Man experience. I could be wrong. I love to be wrong about these things, where I think I don't like something and then I end up loving something. So who knows? We have so many other issues to read. It could turn on me. It could grow on me. I do still. I'll share my opinions on the Scarlet Spider once we finish talking about what happened with this week's reading. But I could be swayed. I'm not shutting it down right away because it's way too soon to do that.
Which is interesting because we're also, I don't remember how many episodes we are into this particular Spider-Man saga, but like it's a while into it, but yet it's still very early on.
Yeah, like I think this is considered maybe like the 6th reading episode. I
Yeah, that
think.
makes sense.
Yeah, because I titled them for all my little notes that I make. I titled them, but yeah, I think we're on number 6, and it's like I don't. There's still so many more to go. Like I haven't had to scroll down yet on the sheet that we have, so we got a lot to go over. But so you're right. So much has happened. They really like pack it in. And I guess that has to do with like how they were releasing comics at the time, but they really pack stuff into these little mini runs. It's wild.
Oh, wait until we get to the next episode, because let me tell you, I'm only doing 3 issues of the comic, and yet it is a full set of notes. It is crazy
Oh no.
because
All right.
it nothing stops. It's just here's a thing, here's a thing, here's a thing.
This one's a little easier. Today we're going to be talking about the funeral for an octopus. It is a little more of a streamlined story. Like you could just kind of read it on its own and be okay with it. There's definitely going to be some parts that if you hadn't read like previous Clone Saga stuff, you might be like a little confused. Um, but also I think we've been pretty mutually confused at some quality parts, and we started from the beginning. So
Yeah.
like, I think you got to decide whether or not that's a fully understanding is that much of a big goal for you, or if you just want to read a little spidey. Um, but yeah, I think we can get right into it if you want.
Yeah,
Oh, I
absolutely.
know. You have to tell. Oh my God. No, you have to tell me about a bright spot. I forgot how this podcast works. I just had a pure panic moment. I was like, wait a minute. I didn't ask Derek how he was doing.
Bright spot. I get so. I mean, the obvious one for me is I just got a big promotion at work.
Yay.
So that, that's very nice and very exciting. It definitely is something that at
It's been a
least
long time coming.
yeah, it's one of those things where it was like, oh, you're only going to be in this position for a certain period of time, and then it's like it comes to taking the next position, and there was nothing available
At
near
the
me.
time. Yeah.
There was stuff that was available, but it's like I am not going over. I had a meeting with one of my bosses, and they were like, "Are you okay with moving?" And I was like, "No, absolutely not."
No,
But no, I
thank
guess
you.
getting a promotion is a big one. Also, on a much like in terms of scale, very different scale. Chocolate almonds, they're great. I had some just before I left work earlier. There was like a little jar of chocolate almonds, and I was like, "Ah, damn, I love almonds. I'm gonna have some of these."
I love that.
And I had way too many.
No, there's no such thing as too many almonds.
That was
No
so
such
good.
thing. Now we should do Bright Spot, and then we should do like top tier treat of the week. Because there's so many. I love treats so much. They are the
Well,
best.
Austin made a bunch of challah bread, so that's gonna be up there too. I love it.
I
Oh,
love challah bread. It's a good
yeah.
time. I really wanted a loaf of it. She sent me a photo, and I was like, "Damn, that's good bread.
Yeah,
I want that bread.
it is very good.
Let's get this bread." I wanted it so bad, and she braids it really well.
Yeah, I mean,
She's a good
we actually
baker.
went over to someone in the synagogue that we're part of. We went to their house, and they did a little like braiding uh uh presentation. It was
Ooh,
very fun.
fancy. I love
Yeah.
that. It sounds like you had such a good treat-filled time.
Oh yeah.
I think my top tier treat is the meatballs from IKEA because I never had them. And Austin would know, but the strawberry shortcake that they had there was banging. It was so good. It was like it didn't have IKEA has no right to have such delicious treats, but here it is.
It's insane
Serving.
to me that you can in the middle of the day be kind of like, I need to buy a couch. Also, I would like some good food. And you can go to one place for both.
It's insane. I love it. They had so many things. I took so many photos of things that I wanted, and who knows? Maybe I'll be getting some of them things. I'll let you know. Well, I'm glad you had some sweet treats. You know who didn't have any sweet treats? Dr. Octopus, because he's dead.
What a great transition.
He died. He died last episode. Spoiler alert, if you didn't watch or listen, I don't know what kind of medium this is anymore. If you did not perceive the last episode, Dr. Octopus is dead. Should we go into what happened in this issue?
So you have Funeral for an Octopus.
Yes.
Is there, I don't know, it's just issue 1, right? There's no like name for, oh, I guess there is. It's called Eight Arms Beyond the Grave.
Yeah. Yes, 8 Arms Beyond the Grave. And then I pretty much stopped giving the subtitles after that because I was like, this is good enough. I'm a fan of this. I want to keep it the whole way. There's also, right before we get into the actual funeral of the late, great Dr. Octopus, there is a wretched Spider-Man Unlimited issue that we have to talk about.
Oh.
Just a little bit.
All right.
Yeah. So this is Spider-Man Unlimited 8. In the grand scheme of things, just to people who are genuinely wanting to read like the Clone Saga, this, if you wanted to read it, you could, but like, don't bust your ass trying to find it. If you're not that determined, it's fine. This is just kind of the first issue where you see the Scarlet Spider and Spider-Man kind of together, but not really. This is probably the closest proximity that I have read them in, which is cool. And then it kind of continues. You can tell like they're writing them closer and closer together, and then maybe they'll collide again. I don't know. Yeah. So Spider-Man Unlimited 8 starts with this terrorist group called Terror Unlimited, which is a bit fitting for the run that it's in. Also, I'm just going to give like a bit of a warning. This this issue does talk a lot about terrorism, and it's also very, I think we mentioned it in other like episodes that like there's going to be an issue that's weirdly close to like 9/11. So this is the one. I did not know that going in. I'm fine. But it was really like kind of intense and just a bit funky. So, I mean, if you need another reason to maybe skip it, and that might be a reason if you're not, ready to read something like that. So, it kind of starts with this terrorist group, Terror Unlimited. They crash into the World Trade Center like through a window, and they enter on one of the floors where there's like a restaurant, and they start taking hostages. And this also happens to be where Mary Jane is. She's having like lunch with a friend, and she is pregnant at the time. We learned previously that, Spider-Man and Mary Jane are going to have a baby. So she is pregnant at this time. This is all kind of moving forward in the timeline. We're going to cut to a much easier scene now.
So you get they burst in.
They burst in during like a lunch hour.
It just cuts away.
And then it's like, moving on. It's really bizarre. So now we run into, do you remember like the first issue that I read? And I was like, there's a homeless man. His name's Richard. We're probably never going to see him again. We see him again. He's back.
Love it.
And Richard is no longer homeless.
Good for him.
Yeah.
We love a success story.
I know, right? He runs into Ben Reilly. Ben Reilly is like staying in a hotel, and this also happens to be where Richard now lives. Richard got his job back at Stark Enterprises, and he's basically Ben's neighbor. And Rich is like thanking Ben. He's like, "Oh, you really like helped me like when I was having a bad time, and I'm just so grateful because like the events that happened after we met, like I ended up being off of the streets." And Ben Reilly's like, oh, that's so nice. Like, we should get coffee sometime. And Richard's like, that's great, but I gotta go right now. I gotta go do some work with this thing called the South Street Mission. And Ben's like, all right, bye. And then kind of the scene ends, and Ben Reilly reads that Dr. Octopus is dead. And though he's never like had a real interaction with Doc Ock, sometimes I don't know what to call him. There's so many names.
Otto.
Otto, Octavius. But
Sure.
so he reads this and he's like, I don't personally know this person, but like I have very strong memories of them, but these memories aren't mine. And he's kind of struggling with like how to deal with this news. So he's like, I'm just gonna go like swing on some webs, and that's how I'm gonna process my feelings. And
I mean, that's
honestly,
very on brand for Spider-Man.
it really is. Also, kind of the way he did it, it was like almost like, I'm gonna use exercise for my mental health. And I was like, wow, good for you, Ben. Ben's doing great. So he's blowing up some steam, swinging around the city. Peter arrives home and he finds a note from MJ saying that like she's out to dinner. The restaurant is called the Skyline, which is in one of the Twin Towers. Uh, no one quite knows the situation at the towers. So he just sees this note and he's like, oh, everything's fine. I have a free afternoon. I'm going to go like take a shower, take a nap kind of deal. So he goes to take like a quick snooze, which is a bit yikes because we, the reader, know what's going on. And you're like, now don't go back to sleep.
I
But
do
we're
like
gonna go.
the idea is just sort of like, and now our hero takes a nap.
Yeah, it's really weird. I'm just it makes me nervous. But so now we're gonna go back to the trade center. And the police are there. They're trying to negotiate with Terror Unlimited. Now, this is a very like weird group of terrorists. Like they're all in like this gold like tech armor, and they're what they're doing, it's not like to be against like the country, what we like typically associate like terrorists to be with. They just want a bunch of money so they can like be on yachts and like weird shit like that. But
It's
they're
okay. I mean, I guess they're. It's not.
I needed to preface like what their motives are just for money so they can be rich and live like rich lifestyles.
That's
And
interesting.
yeah, it's kind of weird that they were like, so we're just gonna take over the trade center. And so the police are like working with them. They're like, what do you want? And the terrorist group is like, we just want a shit ton of money. And so like the police agree with like the requests. They're like, all right, we'll give you a bunch of money. We just have to
This
like
department absolutely negotiates with terrorists.
I guess we're just gonna do that because we
Yeah.
can't think of anything else. And they're like, it just might take a minute to get the money. And so then the terrorist groups are like, no, we want it right now. And they fire a missile out of one of the buildings. And it just kind of they just shoot it at a random location. It's going somewhere else in the city. Unfortunately, it happens to go and hit where the South Street mission is.
Oh no.
Quite frankly, dick move.
Well, yeah.
Like
Also,
the
damn, Richard
people.
has some bad luck.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, Richard dies, which I was really sad about because I was really rooting for him. Um,
Damn.
and while the Scarlet Spider, Ben Reilly, he's swinging around, he witnesses the explosion and he goes to investigate it, and he finds Richard dead.
Oof.
And he is just so sad. He's so upset. He's like, this was like my new friend. It was someone that I like, one of my first like lives saved before, and now they're gone. he's real, and so he's like, I'm going after these people. I'm gonna fuck them up. So so he's gonna try and find who did this. Which, fun fact, it's not gonna be hard to figure out.
I feel like at that point you would just follow the police sirens that seem to be. I mean, if the rocket or the missile or whatever came out of something not that far, like it can't be crazy far.
No, it can't. So thankfully, he's gonna figure it out pretty quickly, like where it came from. But meanwhile, we're going back to the Skyland and the restaurant, and we're just kind of witnessing how shitty Terror Unlimited is. They're just like randomly, just anybody that is an inconvenience to them, if it's like, you know, a hostage who has to go to the bathroom or something, or if it's one of their co people. I've totally forgot the word. It's not a co-worker. They're not on
I mean, kind
payroll.
of. Look, like
Yeah,
they're on the job.
a
They're here to
fellow
make money,
goon.
just like anybody else.
Uh, or like if it's a fellow goon, I'm gonna call it that. They're
Fellow
just,
goon.
yeah. So like there's like a hostage that gets shot because of like he had to go to the bathroom, and then someone's like, "Hey, he just had to go to the bathroom. Why did you do that?" Then like one of the goons will be like, "Yeah, why did they do that?" and would just shoot the person who shot the other person. Like they just don't give a shit. They're just doing whatever. It's really chaotic. And Mary Jane is just like, damn, they're just gonna do this to anybody that gets like slightly in their way. Like, and I'm pregnant. This is
Oof.
dangerous. And I'm like getting stressed for her because I was like, ooh, I don't like this. But she looks out the window as she's like sitting down, and she sees like the silhouette of like a Spider-Man crawling up one of the other towers. And it's Ben Riley. She doesn't know that. She's like, oh, thank God, my husband's going to save the day. Well, currently her husband is not saving the day. He's currently
Yeah, he's
waking
taking
up.
a nap.
He's currently waking up from the nap now.
Oh, okay.
So he wakes up from the nap and hears on the radio about what's been going on. And he's like, oh shit. And so he instantly is like swinging over. I love that I get to say swinging over because that's a verb you don't get to use often for people's movement. So yeah, he's going over. He saves like a chopper that was about to get blown up. I don't know, like with webbing. It's very vague. They kind of just save everybody with webs. I think that's just a fun thing about Spider-Man. I know that that's like the core thing about him. But when you read these for so long, you really are reminded how convenient the webbing is.
It just does whatever.
It does
And
anything. There's
it
impact webbing, there's like compact webbing, there's all of the webbing, and they have it and they're using it. It's great. Both of the Spider-Men don't know that each of them are there. And it's
it's like a
interesting.
sitcom episode.
Kinda. And the interesting thing too is that they go about saving the day in a different way. They both end up approaching different towers. So Spider-Man, because he wants to save his wife, he knows where his wife is. He goes for the tower where the restaurant is and shut those people down. Scarlet Spider noticed that like there is a specific detonator that is going to the other tower. So he's like, I'm going to approach that tower where the detonator is going because they have more bombs, which is like, again, this is not a great this is not a great read for people who are like particularly affected by the events of 9/11. It's like this weird, like, it's kind of serious and tense, but it's also like the people that like are the bad guys in this issue are just so like terrible and like also just so weird. It's really bizarre. But so they're solving the situation in two different ways. And now towards the end of the issue, they start to just bring Ken Ellis, the reporter, in. And he's like really determined to get a story written about this whole like attack to
How
the
dare
point
he?
where he like just sneaks past like the police and like goes into the building where Spider-Man is, and goes up to like one of the terrorists and is like trying to talk to them to get his like story and like beat Yurik, which is apparently just a classic Ken Ellis thing to do, and it's really annoying.
I
And
do love
then
that no matter when you read Spider-Man comics, Ben Urich is like the reporter.
yeah,
I'm like currently, I've mentioned before, I think I'm reading the X-Men comics that came out just within the last year. And Ben Urich is a huge part of it, which is so weird to me.
yeah, it's really bizarre. At first, like Spider-Man, like sees Ken and is like, "What the hell is he doing? Like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life." And then it weirdly like kind of works out because Ken just like distracts one of these people long enough for like Spider-Man to knock him over. And now it's just jumping back and forth between like the Scarlet Spider and Spider-Man, like kicking ass and like being the good guys, doing the right thing, till eventually like the day is saved, Mary Jane is fine, the detonator is gone, like, and everyone's okay, and Ken Ellis gets his like story at the end of it. It was just a weird read.
I
It
can see that.
it was cool from like if you just look at how characters worked, like it was cool to see how like Ben Riley Scarlet Spider and Peter Parker Spider-Man went at solving problems, like the same problem in two different ways.
Mhm.
Um but it just all really like in the current day felt weird reading because of like the context that we now have of like 9/11.
Yeah.
So it was like really weird just seeing a bunch of like weird bronze idiots just like
The bronze idiots.
cuz they would go from being like absolutely ruthless and just like they would kill a random person whether it's their own or someone else's to then just being like, "Oh, I can't wait to be on a yacht with hot babes." And it was very jarring. It was very weird. I didn't like it. um but again, I liked that you could see two characters that are supposed to be each other, but you can see there's like still individuality, which was nice for Ben Riley. But overall, I would have preferred to skip it. So we're gonna move on now.
I feel like that's sort of the way that Spider-Man Unlimited has sort of set uh their stakes are so low now, which is so
Yeah.
weird because like it kind of is supposed to be a book that fits in between things. But then like they started Spider-Man Unlimited with Maximum Carnage. So it was like a main part of the series.
Yeah.
And now it's just kind of like, oh, and then this thing happened. I don't know. That's weird. I also think so. I've mentioned before, my favorite Spider-Man Unlimited is Spider-Man. Well, I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's my favorite that comes to mind right off the top of my head. Spider-Man Unlimited 3, because it introduces. There's a character who is working on a uh, obituary for Doctor Octopus,
Like
and it's
that would have been so cool to read.
that's that one, yes, it is good. I loved that story. And the idea is this person, like Dr. Octopus, is doing a thing, so they are putting an obituary together in the event that he dies because they
Okay.
don't know if he's going to die, right?
Right.
And that way they're just prepared so it can go out with the next issue. And that's great. And it also would make sense to put here. That should have been this
Yeah.
one, you know?
Like this is not related to what is about to happen at all. So the obituary would have been cool, especially as like a prelude.
Yeah.
Um but like and I'm not that much of a history buff. I don't know if something funky was going on in like 1995 at the moment with New York and anything like that, but this was just weird.
Like with the World Trade Center, or
Yeah.
I mean, there were ongoing threats. There in 1993, there was a bombing at the World Trade Center.
Right. Yeah.
So like
Because I
it's
knew
kind
there
of
was
fresh in
something
people's minds.
before, like, yeah, before, like, the 9/11 a lot of us think of today. Um, but it was so weird. I don't know. And then it's like, I don't know. It leaves a really weird taste in my mouth. Some of the art was cool. I'm trying to be positive about it, but overall, it was just a really, like, weird read. It wasn't very, like, pleasant. We lost Richard. I liked Richard.
I just from hearing about Richard from you, I liked Richard.
Like, he was just getting kicked down in life, and then he finally got brought back up, and we were all like, "Oh, yay, good job." And then they're like, and now he dies from, like, literally the stupidest people ever. So it's just weird. It was a weird read. The rest of this is better, though, and it's also, like, all connected to each, like, the next 3 are connected to each other, which is great. 'Cause now
Mhm.
we get to talk about the actual funeral for an octopus, which is the lovely Eight Arms Beyond the Grave. I thankfully took some time in between reading what I read last to getting to this, and it's kind of a big mood shift, and it made me happy. So it opens up with Spider-Man. He is investigating what's left of Doc Ock's lab, and he finds some of, like, the bird toxin. So he takes it for to study later to kind of figure out what's up with it. Now, dressed as Peter Parker, he's gonna go to Doc Ock's funeral because obviously it would be a bit of, like, a stir if he went as Spider-Man. So he's just kind of gonna pull off his, like, photographer for the press kind of thing to get into this funeral. And it does work because it is the event is just, I call it an event because that's really how it's treated. There's reporters from like TV and newspaper, and everyone's there, including Betty Brant. And it's not a lot of loved ones, as you may imagine, because he was a villain. There's a couple goons, because goon is the term of the day. The one family member that is there, though, is Elias Hargrove. So that's, Doc Ock's cousin, who he doesn't show up, obviously, like, in previous Clone Saga things, but he has shown up in other issues occasionally, it sounds like. And so Hargrove is the one that gives the eulogy. He keeps it pretty, like, short and sweet, and, like, he doesn't really shy away from, like, yeah, he was, like, a villain, but, like, hey, like, it's a shame that he is dead, and I'm sure he's left a lot of an impression on many lives. He keeps it pretty much of a neutral, it's a nooch eulogy. Nooch
I,
Yule.
I don't know if you've actually don't know if we've talked about it, but I don't know if you've ever read Speaker for the Dead.
No.
It is one of my favorite books by Orson Scott Card,
Mhm.
and it is a sequel to Ender's Game. But
Okay.
it kind of also like it builds off of some of the events that happen, but you can kind of also just read it on its own.
Right.
And it is so good. And part of the idea, the Speaker for the Dead is a person who goes to a community after someone has died, and they learn sort of the truth about someone, good and bad, and
Yeah.
they kind of give a eulogy for that person. It's sort of a way, like, everyone deserves that regardless of what they did,
Yeah.
because you don't know the context to who they are as a person, why they are the way they are, and a lot of people like learn about that person after they died. There's also like a sci-fi plot behind it, but like
Yeah, but the themes there are, I think, are really nice. Because I
And
agree. I think when
I
someone does
love that.
die,
And that reminds me so much of just, look, this guy's, he was a dick. He died, but like, we're gonna do this anyway.
yeah, and I think that's fair. And I think it also maybe it depends on like what you did in your life, like how
Yeah, no,
severe. But I think like the average person, like you know, or maybe we all deserve respect in the end. I don't know. I
I don't know. I
am
I would
just a
say
wee
for
lass.
Dr. Octopus, it's a little different because it's also like, all right, you were very publicly a you were a super villain.
Yeah, like
Like
he
there
was a
are.
supervillain. And I think it's funky, like if the more I think about the scene, is like, because for me, like I just always was like, yeah, it's Doc Ock. He's a bad guy. He's got metal arms. Watch out. I never really conceived the fact that like he had a family.
Mhm.
Like, so it's kind of crazy to just like see his cousin there.
Well, and
And
also
it's
keep
like,
in mind,
oh wow.
we were just introduced to like a girlfriend that he has, and
Yeah, so
you
it's like
didn't
someone
read
loved him. That's so
you didn't
like,
read the obituary issue of Spider-Man Unlimited, but that has Dr. Octopus, like you go into like he had a very abusive childhood,
yeah.
and some of that tw- twists and bubbles up, and you get, I mean, it's not an excuse for your actions, but you get like some understanding of why you might approach things a little differently.
Yeah, everything affects everything.
Mhm.
Um I think it's so funny that we just got like the deepest existential, like everything is a moral gray area in life, because that's like the shit that I love to read.
And this is actually
And
like
it's just
a
like
bad guy
friggin'
died.
Spider-Man. uh Literature. Funny stuff. So yeah, what a time. The eulogy, again, very nooch. As we've discussed, Dr. Octopus was a complicated man, so he gets a simple yet also complicated eulogy. Uh, Ben, as Scarlet Spider, is kind of lurking from afar because he, as we've discussed, he's a very Dr. Octopus is a very gray area of a person, apparently. Uh, Ben still doesn't really know how to feel or how to grieve the situation. So we hear a little bit of his thoughts, him just being like, I don't know how to feel about you, man. You were pretty terrible, but it's also like shame that a person died. So I think maybe I have the most connection of opinion with Ben at the moment. What a time. But so
we
now
we
like the
were
funeral,
also we were introduced to Peter in a bad time in Peter's life. Look, I like
we
full
were.
card all cards on the table, at least where I have read so far in the Clone Saga. Ben is my favorite Spider-Man so far.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think we're going to see a little more as to why. Because there's some decisions that Spider Man makes in the next issue or two that I just don't. I think they're stupid. And you're about to find out why. After the funeral, like a little while after, Spider Man in the suit and all, he returns to the grave at night. I'm going
Ooh.
to the grave at night. And he's going to pay his respects to Dr. Octopus. He like the way it's all like worded, the dialogue, he like really like feels for Dr. Octopus. I know that like this man saved his life, but he like loves him now. He's like he's like, I'm gonna he's so determined to find who's gonna kill him or who killed him. And he's like, he's now essentially had two funerals for this man.
I'm trying to
It's
think of like I'm trying to put myself in Peter's place. because like I can see on one hand kind of being like, this person was redeemable.
Yeah, I guess so. And like
And
Ben
Luke,
never had that experience because they don't have the same. I'm sure their
yeah.
memories detach at some point.
Well, I
So
think from Ben's perspective, at least one of the last major events that he had with Otto would have been when he accidentally killed Gwen Stacy's dad.
oh
So like that checks out for Peter. There's a lot of context behind, someone who is growing and changing and still a villain, but like clearly has a path forward to
yeah,
be a better person. And that's kind of, you know, eh, for me at least, like, Peter, a core thing about him is that he will do what he can to help someone, even if he doesn't believe them. He will eventually, like, he will do what he can to try to like give them that opportunity to be a better person.
yeah. And now that I'm thinking about it, I wonder if it's he's seeing a lot of like him in his low point as an adjacent to like Dr. Octopus, and then seeing Dr. Octopus voluntarily do a good thing
Yeah.
is kind of like, and now he feels, kind of like an oh shit moment. I can get my stuff together and like I'll be fine. But then seeing that person die, be like, wait, but he was getting another shot. Like I need another shot. I don't want to die. I think it's kind of like that too, maybe.
Yeah, I mean he's gone through a lot in the last however long, in his time
Yeah.
we've been reading, and a lot of that goes into just the context of how you feel in a particular situation.
Yeah.
If that same event happened, if Doc Ock died now, there's a very different context. He might not respond the same way.
That's true. Epiphanies on the podcast. We love it. It's
There's at
also
least
just me
something.
being really judgy towards Spider-Man.
No, I'll keep it. I've read a little bit ahead. I will keep a lot of my opinions for when we get to that.
Okay.
But there are moments where I'm just kind of like, God fucking damn it, Peter.
Yeah, because I think sometimes what a time. My brain just caught on fire for a second. I think sometimes we see like literary characters. It's like why, like they're fictional. Why aren't they just like streamline improving? But then we're like, oh well, writers are humans, and
Yeah.
they're writing the human experience. Epiphanies on the podcast. Okay. Okay. Also, just a thing that I forgot to mention earlier. When he's looking through the lab, like in the very beginning of this whole issue, there's a drawing, and I will send it to you, and we will have it like for people to see. But when he's investigating the lab, he has like a flashlight that, like, it flashes like the Spider-Man face as
Oh,
like the
from
light
his belt.
from his belt. Okay,
Yeah,
so
he's got a crotch light.
it's a dick lamp. It's a dick lamp, and it was the first thing I saw after reading this terrorist issue. It went from like sad things to dick lamp, and it was it was a great U-turn, and it confused
That is
because
one of
there's
the
also
silliest.
you can't see the belt in the shot because of the way his knee is because he's crawling
Gotcha.
around, but it's a dick lamp, and it made me giggle. And so that was one of my pros. You're getting it ahead of time because I couldn't hide it anymore. I realized I didn't mention it in the beginning, and I couldn't wait till the end. I had to tell you now. It's funny. I liked it. It was a good time. It made me tee, and I approve. Okay. So he's done grieving at night. And then... So now we're going to go to Dr. Octopus's attorney meets Hargrove.
His cousin, right.
His cousin. So we've moved on from the grave and Spidey wanting to avenge Dr. Octopus. We are now on the streets of New York with Elias Hargrove and a lawyer. And the lawyer has a package for Elias. He's like, take this. This is the last thing that your cousin wanted you to have. It's like part of the will. So you gotta, it's just like, I have to give it to you because I'm a lawyer. Hargrove, like, begrudgingly takes it. He's like, I don't want anything to do with, like, this supervillain stuff anymore. I just want, like, a clean slate to my life. But it's not over. Sorry, Elias, it's not over. He puts in the tape, and according to, like, this recording, Hargrove is now the owner of all of the Dr. Octopus patents and inventions, like all of his stuff. And this is like because according to Octavius, Otto, I can never remember his name. There's so many O's. Okay, according to Otto, Elias proved himself worthy in this run of like, it's called Lethal Foes of Spider-Man. It'll be like a little asterisk in the issue. So that is where we have seen Hargrove before. I don't know if you've read any of that before.
I have not read that before. I knew the name, but like I think maybe because I've read part of this. I don't think I've ever read Lethal Foes.
Okay, so yeah, apparently that's where Hargrove has earned his right to have all of these deadly weapons and patents and things like that.
I wish I knew more lawyers so that I could ask them, because I'm very curious about the actual legality of this. Like someone who's like a crazy,
like just given a tape. Like, has the lawyer reviewed the tape?
Like what? The person who died and is passing on all this stuff is a known criminal, and most of what they've invented has been used for criminal activities. So, like, I'm curious about how that works. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer.
I kind of just I just rolled with it. Because I'm going to be honest, I didn't think anything of it until you said something, and until like a couple pages had been turned, I was like, wait a minute. Something's not adding up here. How did the lawyer get a hold of this VCR? And this VHS, how did they get all these things? It's because it was the 90s, that's why. I don't know. So that is the end of that scene. And now we're going to go back to the Scarlet Spider, who runs into the new Vulture. There's a new one.
So it's the same Vulture. He's just younger. He drained the life force out of people, specifically Spider-Man's robot parents. It's very confusing. Right. And became younger somehow.
Okay. So they're fighting in the streets of New York. But the Birdman, he escapes. But before he escapes too far, Scarlet Spider attaches like a little tracker to like one of his wing pieces or something.
Yeah, the Spider Tracer.
Yeah, little Spidey Tracer. It's a cute accessory. We're here for it. But so the new Vulture arrives to his destination, which is is a meeting of the Sinister Six. Oh my god. So many people. It's not all six though. It's just four of them.
The Sinister Four.
The fearsome
the
four.
Frightful Four.
The Frightful Four. I'm a fan of that. Now we have an interlude. We can have music for an interlude. So we are at the warehouse where Dr. Octopus's things are, which Hargrove got a tape about. But this is where I was like, things aren't adding up with the lawyer. There's a character, his name is Reinhold. He works for the government, and he wants to make copies of the Doc Ock arms. But the person, the scientist that's like managing the warehouse where all these things are, doesn't agree with the command. And then there comes to a point where they're talking and like the scientist is like, but none of this makes any sense, like scientifically, how you can recreate the arms and get them to like follow the command of the person wearing them because of like the way that Doc Ock made them and how they connected to him and all this stuff. And then for some reason, the man in the government, Reinhold, compares the situation to bumblebees.
To
To
like
bumblebees. Because
okay,
like bumblebees aren't supposed to fly.
that's exactly what I was going to say. He's like, but they don't know that, they just do it. So he's kind of like, just make
He's like,
the
just do it.
impossible happen.
Make bumblebees is
That
essentially what
doesn't
this
quite work. I mean, like, look,
It doesn't. And like
I appreciate the attempt.
Yeah. It's like really bizarre. I'm pulling up, there it is. I'm gonna quote it because just it fascinated me. Because so we read, I mean, I can't speak totally for Derek because Derek might just have a larger physical library than I do. Oliver, please don't eat my root beer float. Thank you. Please hold. I have to move my glass so my cat doesn't drink something he shouldn't. That was very loud. Good boy. Okay. So I read most of this stuff through Marvel Unlimited. I know Derek has some like physical copies of things. But I go through all of Marvel Unlimited, and so it kind of takes you panel by panel, and then sometimes it'll show you the blown up images. But this one just showed me the panel, and it's the two dialogues. So Reinhold is like, maybe you can buy a clue among like the refuse. And the scientist was like, but these readouts don't make any sense. And then the government just yells, neither do bumblebees, Moretti. And it's just so aggressive.
Like,
and I thought
he just hates bumblebees. Just fuck them. They don't make sense. I don't like them.
Yeah, he's just like, neither do bumblebees. And I'm just, that was the end of the page. And I didn't know if he was going to explain it or not. And that gave me so much joy until he then explained it. And I just wish they kept it as is. But then I learned a thing about bumblebees.
So what was it that you learned about bumblebees?
I didn't know that they weren't technically supposed to be able to fly, like just anatomically speaking. Because to me, I'm just like, they're bees. They fly. It's fine.
That's based on a misconception about like how their wings work, really.
Right.
It's one of those things that's like, okay, yeah, I get if it's sort of okay. I don't know if you know about the fighter jet bias when it comes to like, say, like World War II.
Right.
Like an airplane comes back, it's covered in holes, right? Mm-hmm. So like people were working, engineers and scientists really were working to reinforce the areas of the plane that had bullet holes in it, right? Because you're like, hey, that's where they got shot. We need to make sure that like this part of the plane is extra protected.
Right.
The problem with that is you are doing this with planes that made it back, which meant that the ones that were shot down they were the ones who had weak spots that needed to be reinforced, not the ones that made it back. And it's sort of the same, like when you look at like a bumblebee, you think of, oh, this is how this is supposed to work because that's how things similar to it work. So then this doesn't make sense. No, you're just not looking at it the right way.
Yeah.
That's all that is.
What a time. But it made me giggle. From bumblebees to dick lamps. This episode made me giggle. Okay. So, one of the Spider-Men overhears this whole discussion. And it's Spider-Man overhears this whole government discussion and is stressed. Moving on. back to the that's it.
End of scene.
That's it. The Sinister Six meeting is being hosted by Hargrove. He's on like a big, essentially like Skype call. He is the only one that's not physically there. And he is asking them to retrieve Doc Ock's things, which have been quote unquote confiscated by the government. And then the issue ends with the Scarlet Spider breaking into the meeting with like a good sneak attack because the new Vulture had the spider tracker
The
on
spider
it.
tracer, yeah.
Yeah. So cool. It ends with a bang.
Hargrave's plan is to send what remains of the Sinister Six to steal Dr. Octopus's stuff back from the government?
Yes.
Okay. I can get behind it. It's like Ocean's 11.
Yeah.
But with bad guys.
Yeah. So you have the Hobgoblin.
I love the Hobgoblin.
Yeah. You've got Mysterio. You have Electro. And then you've got Hargreaves.
So I guess he's like a fill-in for Doc Ock. So
pretty much.
They're really only missing like...
Oh, and you have a new Vulture. He's just such like a bland character that I literally forgot about him. So it's 5 of them, but really it's like 4 of the actual Sinister Six, and Elias Hargrove has hired them. It later is like he's kind of blackmailing them because like Dr. Octopus had all this information about them. And like, oh, we wouldn't want that to get released. But it's really like the 4/5 of them. But there's gonna be 4 of them doing a lot of the physical action, who are the actual like super villains, who are gonna be like causing most of the chaos in the next issue, which is part 2. So it's gonna open up right where it ended. The Scarlet Spider is beating up these 4 baddies to the point that they have to literally blow up their hiding space just to get away from him.
Damn.
Hargrove is obviously safe because he was in this meeting remotely.
He was the big guy on the TV screen.
Yeah. But he's hoping that nobody, saw his face like Spider-Man, because he doesn't want to get affiliated with this, obviously. And now he just knows they're moving on to phase 2 of the plan to get all of the things back. Meanwhile, the government people have found a way to use the arms. And it has to do with, like, they have to wear this, like, special helmet that they made. And that's how the wearer would get control of the arms. So now not only are you just wearing arms, but you're wearing a helmet and arms, and that's how they function. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah. I'm just picturing it, and I'm in my mind I'm trying to figure out why.
Because it had to do with like the brain waves. They go into like a lot of like big sci-fi kind of buzzwords in order to like describe it. But it has to do with like, oh, like it's all kind of just like,
it's the Star Trek technobabble.
The knee bone connected to the leg bone connected to the hip bone kind of thing, with bigger words in order to describe how your head is connected to your arms.
So I get that. And that's an interesting explanation. I think in the Ultimate Spider-Man comics, one of the things that they eventually reveal is that Doc Ock was like a low-level mutant, and he actually had the ability to control metal. But it was one of those things that it was just such an overlooked thing that he didn't realize that that's what he was doing. And I that was an interesting take on it. I kind of like the idea of it being not him being a mutant, though, like just something.
The way it's discussed in this, it does not allude to him being a mutant or anything. They're just like, he was such a genius, and he had found a way to like really get the tech to connect to him. But because no other scientist is as smart as him at the time, as they had to make a physical accessory apart
Yeah,
from
yeah.
the arms to get the arms to work, is essentially like the spark notes of how the arms are now going to be capable of functioning.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So at this point, once we are done listening to the TED Talk of how arms work, the Sinister Six breaks in. And because Spider Man had overheard the thing with the arms, he obviously is a bit concerned about somebody taking all of this weaponry and technology. So he's been keeping an eye on the warehouse. He's going to see Sinister Six break in, and now Spider Man is fighting them.
Okay.
Also, just because, again, the Scarlet Spider just had a building blow up on top of him. This is the Clone Saga, so like he's gonna be fine. He's just not in this scene because he's getting out of like a pile of plywood or something. So that's fine. Don't worry about Ben. He's fine. But Spider-Man is fighting these four. He's doing a good job, but he needs some help. So this is a thing that I didn't like. He puts on the helmet and the arms in order to fight them, which I understand that you have a lot of respect now for Dr. Octopus, and you obviously don't want the weaponry to get in the wrong hands, like of supervillains. But what are you doing? You didn't want the government making this a thing for people to use. Why are you immediately like, I gotta put on the helmet? I gotta get this around my waist. It's very weird. I thought it was a weird decision. And I mean, like, it at the moment it was working for him because like he is starting to win the battle. But during all this fighting, Electro breaks the helmet. So now, like, he's automatically screwed because now he's stuck in the arms, but has no way of controlling them, which is causing, like, even more chaos. Like, the building is breaking, people are trying to get out. While people are trying to get out, there's, like, a shadowy figure that takes one of the pieces of equipment. It's like a little small, like, tube, almost. And Spider-Man is now just running loose with his 4 extra arms, not knowing how to use them. And that's pretty much where it's gonna end. The very final scene is while trying Spider-Cat. Sorry. While trying to flee the scene, Mysterio and Electro, they are cornered by Kane, who just literally comes out of nowhere. So this was a very chaotic read.
I feel like that's Kane's MO though.
Yeah, it's just showing up whenever, wherever, for whatever reason. It's a time. But that's where it ends. I thought that Scarlet Spider was a good old badass in this situation. There is some imagery where he is just like zooming and kicking 4 guys' butts at once. And I thought it was really cool. And he's just quippy as he's doing it. And he's just doing it because he's like, bad guys need to be stopped. And I'm gonna do it. And we're like, hell yeah, do your thing. And then again, the thing I didn't like was Peter Parker Spider-Man putting on the arms. As soon as he did it, I was like, this is not gonna go well for you. And I'm right.
To me, so that brings to mind a comic book from like the 80s where there's a kid who loves Spider-Man so much and also created his own version of Dr. Octopus's legs, and he became Spider Kid. So he wears a Spider-Man costume and he has Dr. Octopus arms. And that is fine. That's a fun, I love that issue. It's fun and silly and good.
Right.
But it also undercuts part of the story that we're doing because they literally were just saying that the only person who could get those to work was Otto because he's a genius. And then it reminds me, with Spider-Man putting those on, it reminds me of Spider-Kid, who was a kid who created his own version of those arms. So
I love it.
I think that, I mean, look, I'm
How
sure
did
they
the
weren't
kids' arms
thinking
work?
about it, but I'm sorry.
How were the kids' arms? Did they work out?
They worked. They were fine. I think if I remember correctly, they go a little haywire at some point. But like he is a character in the comics now, as an adult, named. Oh yeah, I just looked. It named the Steel Spider, and he has. They're different from Otto's, but he has 4 mechanical arms.
Okay.
They're a lot like the arms that the Iron Spider costume has. Just like big spider legs that come out.
Yeah, just like big pins that don't have like the grippies.
Yeah, but in the his original appearance, they looked very much like a primitive version, but still a version of Dr. Octopus's arms.
I getcha.
I'm sure that's not anything that they were thinking about when they wrote this, but the fact that like it's a very specific image, and then I think of Peter putting those on, I immediately go back to this kid and I'm like, hey, wait a minute.
Wait.
This goes counter to something that happened earlier in this issue.
Yeah. We might have to compare the writers.
Bill Mantlo is the one who wrote. Oh, I love Bill Mantlo.
Good job, Bill.
He is the one who wrote Spider Kid. Bill Mantlo also was the one who wrote. He did a lot of like Cloak and Dagger. A lot of. I think he's the one who did Rom Space Knight. Yep, love it. Damn, I'm a big Bill Mantlo fan. I didn't even know it.
Woo! Good job, Bill.
Since we're on the subject of Bill Mantlo,
yeah,
I'm going to bring the story down a little bit. So Bill Mantlo was hit in a hit and run accident in 1992.
Oh no.
He is currently still alive.
Oh wow.
But is pretty much not able to really take care of himself. He suffered severe head trauma. There are places where you can make donations. They go to his brother to help with his care. And I'm just going to read that out. You can send donations to Michael Mantlo at 425 Riverside Drive, number 12, East in New York, New York 10025. That is horrible to hear.
Yeah.
So just because we brought that up, I didn't want to let that go without at least saying, here's something that maybe we should keep in mind.
Yeah.
Moving on to something a little bit more fun.
Okay. Well, that was the end of part 2.
So we're going to go into part 3.
Yeah, we're going to close it off.
Nice.
All right. And it's one of those where it just picks up where it left off. So Spider-Man is still trapped in the arms and they're running wild. And they're just like, the arms are attacking anything and everything. They are chaotic neutral at the moment. And it's a time. It gets to the point where like the armed forces are trying to like shoot down the legs, and they're pretty upset that Spider-Man is attached to them because he does look like he's the one like running the show.
Yeah.
And eventually like Spider-Man does like stop the arms. He destroys them with like his webbing, his good convenient webbing. The government is upset with him for destroying the legs and also wearing them. And Spider-Man essentially is like, I don't have time for this. I have to go back to the crime scene because he knows like Sinister Six was there. So he just like flees the scene. He doesn't really care that he's getting berated. He's on his way back. But meanwhile, like I said, Scarlet Spider is fine. He is emerging from the rubble of the Sinister Six hideout, and he did recognize Elias Hargrove from when he was on the big TV screen, and also because he was sitting afar during the funeral and saw the eulogy, so he puts two and two together and is like, I gotta go find this man. So he goes off to do that. And now we're going to cut again back to the original crime scene where Kane has conveniently showed up. And at the end of the last issue, he had cornered Mysterio and Electro. And he's like, I'm going to mark ya. Arg. That's how he sounds to me now. Because he's getting sillier and sillier. He's just too convenient. But inconveniently for him, he goes to kill Mysterio first, and he discovers that this is just a robot dupe of Mysterio. And he's like, bah! He gets mad about it. And he throws, like, the robot aside, and he's like, I guess I'll just, like, accept, like, that I'm just killing Electro today. And he goes in for the kill, but as we know, Spider-Man was coming back to the crime scene. So Spider-Man is on his way back, and Kane's like, I can't let him see me yet. And so Kane flees before murdering any more people. And so Spider-Man lands. He's like, oh, Electro's here. And there's a Mysterio robot. This keeps getting weirder and weirder. I just want answers. And that's, like, pretty much it for that part. But now we're going to go to Elias Hargrove, and he has, like, realized some things about this whole situation. So he bursts into the lawyer's office of Dr. Octopus. Actually, no, he did not. He calls the lawyer to come to his apartment. I'm gonna start that over. There was a point where I, like, read this, and it looked like he went into the office. But then it's like someone comes in and he's like, I looked in the phone book and I found Hargrove's, like, apartment address. So, like, the writers didn't know where this was set.
That checks out.
I don't know if you want to keep any of that, but
that's fine.
But I needed somebody to know.
So there was some confusion over where this takes place. It's either it takes place at Hargrove's apartment, but
also a lawyer office.
They live in the same place
because, like, Hargrove is the one that bursts into the scene, and the lawyer's already there. But then, in order to explain.
I love it when this shit does not make sense and it just breaks all, like, all right, wait, how does this work?
I had to read this issue twice solely because, like, I was confused by what's about to happen. Alright, so I'm gonna keep it that Elias Hargrove burst into Doc Ock's lawyer's office.
Slash his own apartment.
And it's because he realizes, like, there's the tape that he'd been given in the very beginning is a fraud. And it shows a little picture of, like, what was on the tape, and you see that so Dr. Octopus in the comics, at least of this run, always wears sunglasses.
Yeah.
And he always looks like he's drooling and constipated. So it's a shot.
I think that might just be for this comic.
He's in a constant, like, yelling face. Like, looks like he's, like, breaking a sweat, mad. It's a time. But so we see the constipated face of Dr. Octopus, and in the reflection of the sunglasses, like, you see a skyline, but the skyline is upside down. So apparently that is, like, how we learn that plot twist. It's all Mysterio's fault.
So wait, I don't follow.
Okay, so I'm gonna get into that. Mysterio apparently had like holographed himself as Dr. Octopus's lawyer from the beginning, which is what we're learning right now, like in real time.
Okay.
We never knew any of this. They decided to make this the plot twist. That this was Mysterio's doing all along, and Mysterio created this tape with not real Dr. Octopus. And for some reason, because of how like things were reflecting off of these like not real Dr. Octopus sunglasses, is how Elias Hargrove decides that like he's being like tricked.
This seems very convoluted.
It
for like
is.
For like
and they
no
can't even
reason.
decide what the setting is at the moment. So ballsy move to make this your plot twist.
Especially, it seems like everything was kind of everything was flowing.
It was going nice and streamlined. I thought I was going to be reading another thing where it was like the Grim Hunter
and then they just
kind of
got
situation.
Fucking drunk in this last issue.
I don't know what happened. It's a time for sure. So we're learning that like it's been Mysterio all along, and it's all because he wanted like this data disc, which is what was in that tube that was stolen. So Mysterio sent out his robot dupe to run away with Electro, while the real Mysterio stole the tube of the data disc that holds all of Dr. Octopus's like information and secrets, all that stuff.
Interesting. This is also a weird thing to do where the whole thing is supposed to be like about Dr. Octopus's death, and it's actually a Mysterio plot.
Yeah.
It's like kind of a weird idea. I mean, all right, I'll go with it. Sure. But you're kind of making it about someone else.
It turned into like, instead of like maybe a thing that is like, oh, grief is weird, to like fun theft mystery. I don't know.
Someone really got into the idea of doing a heist movie as a comic.
Yeah, with like a man whose head is a goldfish bowl.
Yeah. You have all of the stuff there, and it's just kind of like filling in the dots and not really thinking about why are we telling this story? Like, why is this the story that's a heist?
Yeah, because it kind of seems like the only thing important about Doc Ock in this set of issues is just that he had a bunch of weapons and stuff, and people wanted it now that he was gone. Which, like, yeah, I guess that would happen if, like, I don't know, like, but I don't know. I didn't think that would be like the thing. It's an easy read, but this could now be about any supervillain having their stash taken away.
I would have enjoyed reading more about like the family that he left behind, how this affects Peter. Add some plot around that, you know?
Yeah, instead of just repeating like, I'm Peter Parker, and I'm gonna avenge like Dr. Otto Octavius. And
yeah,
I'm Ben, and I don't know how to feel. Maybe
the more I think about it, this
that
story doesn't make sense. I mean, it does in terms of like there is a series of events,
and like A happens and B happens and C happens, but thematically,
like, why are you telling it makes no sense.
Like, how does this really affect the Clone Saga? Does like Dr. Octopus have something about clones on his disc? There's no point where Peter dives more into the bird toxin study. Like, so it's just a bit much like a one-shot mystery plot twist thing. It's a bit weird.
Yeah, like if you like remove it from the Clone Saga, if you're just dealing with Dr. Octopus's death, it's not focusing on him or the people that are left behind. So that kind of falls apart. Keeping it within the Clone Saga, it has nothing to do with anything other than Dr. Octopus have like his death sort of making the story happen. And then like having both Ben and Peter be involved but not quite working together
And just
is
kind of
also
using them as like just little action figures.
set pieces. They're
Yeah.
man, this is a weird story.
It's really weird. It's almost over. It really just ends with like Mysterio explains that like the data disk can only be unlocked with like this secret code, which is why he like kind of tricks Elias Hargrove the whole time. One, because eventually like all of this would be pinned on him, like robbing the government of all these specialized weapons that they've, you know,
Yeah.
apprehended. And two, he's assuming that Elias would know what the code is. But this guy doesn't know the code. He's like, I just wanted to be left alone. Like, I don't know what this is. Like, we didn't talk that much. I don't know what it is. And Mysterio's like, I guess I'll have to kill you then. And that's when Scarlet Spider comes and is like, I found you in your apartment, Elias Hargrove. And it's like, I didn't know we were in an apartment. I thought we were in a lawyer office. And like, so Mysterio and Scarlet Spider fight, and Mysterio's whole thing, which I now know is like hallucinations, holographs, trickery kind of thing.
Oh wait, do you not know Mysterio?
I like loosely knew of him. I knew he had like the bowl for a head, and
Yeah,
he used a
he's
lot
the
of
fishbowl guy.
mist, hence the
Yeah.
name. Like I knew he was like an illusion-y dude, but I guess I just never really like seen it happen. So we see how like his fighting style is, and basically Scarlet Spider gets him in a corner, and Mysterio's like, well, I'll just self-destruct this data disk because that's what happens when you try to open the disk without the code. And he does.
It's like a Austin Powers kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he does that, and Scarlet Spider gets Elias out of there. No one knows where Mysterio is now. He's probably gonna come back and hopefully explain how he's relevant. And yeah, that's pretty much how it ends.
What a
Scarlet
wild
Spider's
ending.
Yeah, Scarlet Spider's like, all right, Elias, here's your second shot at life. But if you come back to this villain stuff in any way, because now you have no reason to,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna be so nice next time. And Spider-Man's like, I didn't get any of my questions answered, but boy, do I want to find the guy that killed Dr. Octopus. And that's how it ends.
Good on you, Pete. Good on
So,
you.
really, this whole thing was just Scarlet Spider saving the day again, and Spider-Man saving the day, but also, like, still kind of flatlining as to, like, what's going on with him. And that's what we got. It was, like, fun. Like, the bumblebees and the dick lamp, and, like, Scarlet Spider was very quippy, but and, like, it was cool to see, like, some very colorful villains, but overall just, like, written as a story for a large event series,
Yeah.
I feel like it wasn't really connected. Like,
And
Kane
that's
showed up for 2 panels as a convenience, and if this is really the person that they want to be their big baddie, like, give him more context. And, like, maybe, like, he's the one who should have been the Mysterio stuffing. I don't know.
I think yeah, that is a I mean, we've already kind of talked about like how this doesn't quite fit in with
Yeah, it was just kinda
anything that
weird.
really happened around it. I do like weird, fun little stories like this, and I think
Yeah,
that
but I
with
think it's, like, with the intention of what we're reading it for at the moment, it's kind of like, because we have all this other context of the previous things that we just read. It's like, where do you fit in?
I think also with an ongoing series like Spider-Man and with events like the Clone Saga, even if it is like a thing that's kind of like loosely tied together, like you're telling other stories within the context of like the umbrella of the Clone Saga.
Right.
So like you're gonna have adventures that don't really like they don't add up to anything. It's just the next the next episode in this saga. And like that makes some sort of sense, but it feels like we've had a lot of that. A lot of just spinning wheels of like, okay, we've killed off Doc Ock, and now we're going to do a thing that's about the death of Doc Ock, but it's not really. And
No, it's
Ben
just
and
kind of
Peter
like
are in it, and they don't really like meet up.
No.
And then Kane's in it, but he doesn't do anything. Like, what the fuck are you for? What is this here for?
Yeah. What is it here for? Absolutely nothing.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
it was fun to read. Like, I read it
Yeah.
all in a night. It's a quick, like, jumpy read. If you want that, go for it. Like, because if I didn't have to think about all of the extra context of the Clone Saga for this, and I just read that, I would be like, okay, cool.
No, I like short to the point stories like that. It's just
Yeah.
weird where it fits in.
Especially because, like, I like to jump back and forth in my reading material. I will sometimes read something very in depth and lengthy and, like, just overall a lot. And then I go for my little, like, after dinner mint of a reading where it's just easy breezy. And I think that's fine. There is, like, a point for every different kind of story style. But I also, with this, I have to take into context that they're trying to do some sort of big transitional event. And I feel like this didn't really even give a little essence of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I was gonna say more, but like, yeah.
Cause like it did, like, I don't know if maybe it just got like Spider-Man a little closer to figuring out that Kane is the one that killed Dr. Octopus, but they didn't. It ended with Spider-Man just being like, I didn't get any of my
They didn't even
I'm
meet.
run dry of my answers. I didn't get any answers. But I'll figure it out. It was just weird. Like, give him a little bit of progress or maybe make him fall back. Like, don't have him stay in the same place though. Because I feel like comics are not the place for you to just be stuck in the same rut for multiple issues. You either have to move forward or you have to, like, fail at something.
Right.
And he just kind of didn't do anything. He was just accessory to chaotic manic mechanical arms. It was weird.
Well, yeah.
I didn't
don't
realize
have
how fired up I would be about this. I thought I was like, oh, this is fun and it's light, and now I'm like, oh my god, this meant nothing.
well, so that's where you had your fun romp of an adventure with it, and
Yeah.
then you started thinking about where it fits into stuff, and that's where